Okay, the next one comes from Fools, and I apologise if I've got your name wrong because you've got a silent Y, I think, in your name. And it says, hello, your tutorial is very good, but I've not been able to restore the sounds to my Korg T3. Where can I get the files Korg T1 MIDI settings.ini and Korg T1 setups.ini? Firstly, I would say I've never seen files with those names. I always see files with SYX or SYS or MID for the backup files, being either a SysX backup or a recorded MIDI file. So that's what you're looking for on the internet. And normally you'll either find it as Korg T1 or Korg T-Series Factory Settings .sys or .mid or Korg T1 or Korg Sister T-Series Setup, exactly the same .sys .mid. Now I can't publish the response to you, and the reason I can't publish the response is because you've included your email details in the response, and that breaks the law in the UK at the moment, the way that GDPR is set up. So if you were to remove your email account from your question, I will merrily send you a link to where you can get these from. However, if you don't, the easiest way to do it is to go to this location, and it's a bit difficult, but if you go to webarchive.org and search their site for T-Series Factory Reset, you should find the files you're looking for. As I said, I'm going to post that link underneath the video so that other people can find it as well. The next one comes from Dave R. Bailey. Right, so I've been using my 1987 Roland RD300 digital piano with my prize Roland D50, but needed something more realistic for horns and such. I was thinking of the Korg M1, but then a friend had told me there was something new and better, the Korg T3. Well, yes, it was better than the M1, I agree with you on that. I checked it out, and for live use, I like the patch selection method since it was instant recall, not loading sample discs or anything, and similar to my D50. Yes, the idea is the same, but the actual architecture is quite different. The day after I brought it home, I dug up the manual and learned how to load the demo sequences. I still get chills when I hear the intro to Hop Up, and when I press start that day and heard this keyboard make the sound, I literally had tears welling up in my eyes with excitement at what I had just brought. It was so overwhelming that in that moment, the one had some of the most beautiful chords and pads I had ever heard. Not to mention the sax solo. I still love those keyboards to this day. And you join a list of people who absolutely love the M and the T series. They were game changers in terms of the keyboards, whereas up until that point the DX7 and the D50 had been synthesizers. All of a sudden along came the M series and the T series, and they were proper workstations. A musician could really actually construct a whole song on these things. It wasn't easy, but you could do it. Of course, you realise that many of the demos on the M series and the T series were written by the legendary Don Muro, and I've spoken about Don on the channel before. And he's still around. I mean, if you search the internet, you'll find his website, and he's still composing. But he was commissioned in the early 90s when the M series and the T series were around. He was actually commissioned by Korg to write this stuff. So these songs that you're hearing, a lot of them were written by Don Muro. And he just seemed to understand the architecture of these instruments utterly. Now, I can recall going back to the early 90s, and I was in a studio with some friends, and a band were recording in the studio, and the key player walked in with his brand new M1, and he literally had bought it within a few days earlier, was blown away by the sound. And we sat there in the studio with his bandmates as they were trying to work out how they were going to integrate the M1 into the songs they were about to record. And they were all just blown away, as were all the casual observers who were in the area at the time. This thing was superb. And the T-Series then took over from the M1. It expanded the sound sets. However, the problem was the architecture of the M series and the architecture of the T series was so similar that it didn't stand out enough from the M series, which is probably why the T series production came to an end before the M series production came to an end. Whereas the T series was meant to be the replacement for the M series. It didn't sort of kind of work that way. Now, you know, I couldn't afford one of these things back in the day. I couldn't afford to drop a few £1,000 on an M1. I wish I could, but I couldn't. I acquired my M1 a number of years later, and it's been lovingly restored. So, you know, that's where we are. And and the M1 will be returning to the studio shortly, because not only is it a great keyboard, it's also a fantastic MIDI controller. The next one comes from Up4. Another great YouTube name. Love it. And he writes, I'm assuming it's he, could be a she. They write, what's the make and model of the unit, thanks? Now this is in response to the studio setup video I did a long time ago in 2016, where I talked about power and surge protection, and I purposely put into the back of each enclosure a surge protector. So I have an APC, and then I have a surge protector on the back of each unit. Now that's done on purpose, and it's done on purpose just in case I plug that unit, I move the unit somewhere else and I plug it directly into the mains. I still have some sort of protection there from mains spikes. Now, generally in the studio, I have everything running through two APCs. I've got an APC on what runs roughly half the keyboards, and an APC that runs the other half of the keyboards, and they sort of split the stacks of equipment sort of roughly equally between the two of them. There's no rough science on it. It's that one plugs into that one, that plugs into that one. That's sort of kind of how it works. But it was to do with the fact when I was moving things around, I just consciously put a surge protector in there so that even if it wasn't running on an APC, I still had protection. I was still protecting the electronics of the instruments from surges in the power supply. Now, the unit I've been putting into mine is an unbranded unit. It doesn't come with a brand. I did start with comms to go stuff, but the problem with that is that they don't do a unit like this. So it's an unbranded unit. It's a 6-way UK socket power supply, and in the answer to your question, I've actually put a link to an eBay listing which has the same unit. So if you wanted to go and find the unit, there is where the unit is. And the final one for this section comes from Volgazap. And he writes, is it a kit DIY? How much money? So this is in response to the DTronics DT7 unboxing I did last year. Unfortunately, this is not a kit. So you can't buy it and build it yourself. Mind you, having said that, building it yourself would be a very interesting exercise given the number of control knobs and fader on the unit itself. It's actually made by a company called DTronics. They're Dutch, and you buy their stuff through a partner website called Sonic Sales. However, when I went and looked at Sonic Sales this morning, just to make sure, they weren't listing the DT7 as available at the moment. Now I do know that DTronics make these in batches. Okay, so they don't have them running all the time. They make a batch of them based on demand. And I did receive an email not many days ago where they were saying there were some remaining units in the current batch for the DT7. So if you want one, I suggest you go to DTronics, and again, in the response to the question here, I will put the websites, and ask them if they've got any units still in the current batch that remain unsold. Unfortunately, these are not cheap. Okay, I paid about €1,000 for mine, so expect a bill in that area. And the other thing about this type of unit, there is nothing else in the market that does this. Okay, I searched high and low for another alternative to this. I've been looking for a programmer for the DX7 for years, and I've never come across one. This is the only one I've ever found. So, you know, that's your option. Buy it or don't buy it.
So this is the point in the video where I turn around to you, my viewer, and say, if you enjoyed the content of this video, please give it a thumbs up. The way the Google and YouTube analytic engines work is that the more likes you get against a video, the more it gets promoted by YouTube and Google, and therefore more people with the similar interests to what you have and I have get to see this content. This channel is driven by my love of music technology. That's what it's called, the Music Tech Guy for. If you've got queries, want to ask questions about themes or issues I raise on this channel, please, please, please do. Put your comments into the comment section below the video, and I will try to address whatever issue it is you've raised or whatever question you've raised. If it's something to do with me making future videos in terms of how to do something on a particular piece of equipment I possess, please feel free to say that as well. I can't promise to make videos on all the requests I get, but I do have a jolly good go at making most of them. Around about here is the subscribe button. Again, to do with the YouTube and Google analytic process, the more subscribers the channel gets, the more the channel gets promoted, and the more people get to see the content that you have obviously just watched. If you want to see my latest video, it will be in one of these two boxes on this side of the screen. Also, there is a second box there, and that video will be chosen for you by YouTube based on your YouTube preferences. I look forward to the next time that we interact. And I do mean interact, because I always enjoy reading your comments back to me. But for now, bye-bye.